So far, in this emotional and dramatic story, we've been introduced to a family torn apart by secrets. Baba Ade, once a powerful Nigerian businessman, had a secret affair with his secretary Yinka, leading to the birth of Kemi. Now, years later, Baba Ade's children, Ayo and Kemi, have unknowingly fallen in love, unaware that they are siblings. Baba Ade, struggling with guilt, devises a plan to prevent their marriage without destroying his family. But as the truth begins to surface, the family faces a web of betrayal, heartbreak, and a haunting past that threatens to tear them apart. In the last episode, we saw Ayo excitedly telling his father about his plans to marry Kemi, an internet influencer. However, Baba Ade, hiding the secret that Kemi may be his daughter, disguises himself as a garbage man to observe her true character. Unfortunately, Kemi's arrogant and rude behavior raises Baba Ade's concerns. He later discovers Kemi is indeed his daughter from his past affair, confirming his worst fear, that Ayo and Kemi are siblings. As tensions rise, Baba Ade is left with an impossible choice: reveal the devastating truth to Ayo, or let their relationship continue on a dangerous path. The emotional roller coaster has just begun, and there's so much more to come. Baba Ade sat in the dimly lit living room, the gentle hum of the evening breeze slipping through the windows. His once commanding presence, known across Lagos, had softened over the years. Now, the wrinkles on his face told stories of success, loss, and regret. He had come a long way, yet this night felt heavier than most. Ayo, his son, and Kemi, his daughter, two children bound by blood, but torn apart by secrets, sat across from him, their faces filled with cautious hope. As they settled into the stillness of the evening, Kemi's question echoed in the air. "What about your wife, Ayo's mother? Is she still alive? Where does she live?" The question caught Baba Ade off guard, though he knew it had been brewing for years. His heart tightened, his past rushing back like a flood. He had promised himself he would never speak of Nena again, but the time had come. Clearing his throat, he began. "It is a long story, one I should have told you both a long time ago. Many years ago, when Baba Ade was a young, ambitious man, Nena was the light in his life. She had a mind as sharp as the blade of a sword and a heart as wide as the sky. They had met in the bustling markets of Lagos, where Baba Ade was still a struggling entrepreneur, trying to make a name for himself in the world of business. Nena, with her calm demeanor and quiet brilliance, was the perfect partner. She saw potential in Ade, not just in his business acumen, but in his soul, and together they built an empire. But what many didn't know was that Nena was the true architect of his success. While Baba Ade traveled and made deals, it was Nena who strategized, negotiated, and secured relationships with business partners. She stayed behind the scenes, never asking for recognition, always content with aid getting the glory. "She was my everything," Baba Ade said, his voice soft, filled with regret. "But I was young and foolish." Their business thrived, and so did their family. Nena was pregnant with their first child, Ayo, when Baba Ade's life began to spiral out of control. Success brought temptation, and in his foolishness, Baba Ade allowed himself to stray. Yinka, his secretary, was a distraction, nothing more. Or so he told himself at the time. But Yinka became pregnant, and the consequences of his actions soon became unbearable. Instead of facing the truth, Baba Ade panicked. He fired Yinka, severing ties, and did his best to forget the child she bore, Kemi. But life doesn't allow us to forget, Baba Ade whispered. The truth finds its way back, no matter how hard you try to bury it. The dimly lit room was heavy with tension, the air thick with unsaid words. Baba Ade sat in his armchair, staring at the glass of whiskey in his hand, the ice melting slowly, just as his once proud and powerful demeanor had crumbled over the years. Across from him, Ayo and Kemi sat on the edge of the sofa, their eyes fixated on him, waiting. They had been patient for so long, but tonight was different. Tonight, Kemi's question had cracked open a door Baba Ade had fought so hard to keep shut. "Where is she, Baba?" Kemi asked again, her voice laced with both curiosity and an undercurrent of resentment. "Your wife, Ayo's mother. Why isn't she here?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Baba Ade clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of decades of mistakes press down on him. His heart raced, but there was no running anymore. He had been running his entire life, away from the truth, from responsibility, from his own guilt. He closed his eyes, exhaled deeply, and finally spoke. "Your mother, Nena," he began slowly, his voice heavy with regret. "She is the most extraordinary woman I have ever known. And I failed her. I failed all of you." Ayo, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke, his voice low and filled with restrained anger. "What do you mean, Baba? What exactly did you do?" Baba Ade looked up, his eyes meeting Ayo's. "I betrayed her." The room seemed to shrink around them as Baba Ade's words hung in the air. Kemi and Ayo exchanged a glance, but neither interrupted him. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the truth that had evaded them for years. "It all started when your mother was pregnant with you, Ayo," Baba Ade continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I was young, successful, arrogant. I thought I had everything under control. But success, it got to my head. And that's when I met Yinka." Kemi's eyes widened. "Yinka, my mother." Baba Ade nodded, shame washing over him. "Yes, I was stupid. I thought it was just a harmless distraction. But then Yinka got pregnant, and I panicked." "You panicked?" Ayo's voice rose, disbelief flooding his tone. "You ruined 2 women's lives, destroyed a family, and you call it panic." "I know," Baba Ade whispered, his hands trembling. "I know I was a coward. Instead of owning up to my mistakes, I tried to fix things the only way I knew how. I fired Yinka, cut her off, and pretended none of it happened. But Nena, she knew. She always knew." Baba Ade's eyes filled with tears, the weight of his confession breaking through the facade he had held up for so long. "Nena begged me to sort out my life. She warned me that I was losing control, that I was destroying everything we had built. But I didn't listen. I was too proud, too stubborn." Kemi's face twisted with emotion. "So you just left my mother to raise me alone? You cut us out of your life as if we didn't exist?" Baba Ade lowered his head. "I was selfish. I didn't want to risk losing Nena, or you, Ayo. I thought if I ignored the problem, it would go away. But Nena, she wasn't the kind of woman who would stay silent forever. One day, after years of trying to hold our family together, she left. She left me with Ayo because she couldn't bear to stay in the house with a man who had lied to her for so long." Ayo slammed his hand on the armrest, his anger finally boiling over. "And you let her go? You didn't even try to fix things? You just let her walk away?" "I didn't know what to do." Baba Ade's voice cracked, desperation seeping into every word. "I had lied for so long, I didn't know how to make it right. So I told myself she would come back. I convinced myself that, like always, she would forgive me. But she didn't. Kemi, her voice soft but cutting, leaned forward. And you never looked for her? You never tried to make things right for her, for us. Baba Ade swallowed hard, his heart aching with the realization of how much he had failed them all. I couldn't face the truth. I couldn't face what I had done. And by the time I wanted to, it was too late. Nena had disappeared. And I was left with nothing but my lies. The room fell into a heavy silence once again. Ayo's jaw tightened. His eyes brimming with tears he refused to shed. So all these years, you let us live in this mess you created. You never told me about Kemi. You never told her about me. And now we almost... His voice broke, and Kemi reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. We're here now, she whispered. We can fix this together. Baba Ade looked at his two children, his heart swelling with both pride and shame. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said quietly. I've hurt you both in ways I can never take back. But if you can find it in your hearts to give me a chance, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. Kemi's eyes narrowed slightly. Before we talk about forgiveness, there's one more thing. Where is she? Where is Nena? Baba Ade felt the walls closing in again, the weight of another truth he had been too cowardly to face pressing down on him. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. She left, and I never found her. But I will. I will find her, and I will bring her back. Kemi stood up, her eyes blazing. You'd better, she said firmly, because this isn't just about you anymore, Baba. We all deserve the truth, and Nena, she deserves justice. The room was silent as Kemi's words lingered in the air, the truth finally out, but far from over. Kemi's words echoed through the room like a sharp crack in the stillness. Baba Ade felt the full weight of them, sinking deeper into his chair. He had long avoided this reckoning, the one Nena had warned him about over and over again. Now it was upon him, and his children, the very people he had once thought he was protecting, were demanding answers. He had no more lies to hide behind, only the painful truth. Ayo's eyes, dark and stormy, locked onto his father's. You never told me anything about my mother after she left. All these years, I thought she abandoned me, left us. But it was you, wasn't it? You let her leave because you couldn't face what you'd done. Baba Ade opened his mouth to speak, but found no words. His silence said everything Ayo needed to hear. I spent years blaming her, Ayo continued, his voice shaking with emotion. Every time I saw another kid with their mom, I wondered why mine didn't want me. But it wasn't her, was it? It was you. The shame on Baba Ade's face was palpable. Ayo, I didn't know how to fix it. I thought I could keep everything together, but I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. Kemi, who had been pacing the room in frustration, stopped abruptly and turned to face Baba Ade. You say you want to make things right, but how? You let Yinka struggle alone. You left me without a father. You let Nena walk away. How do you fix that, Baba? How do you make up for all those years? Baba Ade swallowed hard, his voice shaking as he spoke. I don't know if I can ever make up for it, Kemi, but I will try. The first step is finding Nena. She deserves better. You all do. Kemi crossed her arms, skeptical. And how are you going to do that? You don't even know where she is. Baba Ade sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. There's someone who might know. Her sister, Ifeoma. They were always close, and I think Nena might have gone to her after she left. Ayo leaned forward, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Do you think Ifeoma will help us find her? I don't know, Baba Ade admitted, but I have to try. I owe it to Nena, and to you both. Kemi stood still for a moment, then nodded. You'd better start looking soon, Baba, because this isn't over until we find her. Ayo, quieter now, finally spoke again. Tell us more about her, Baba. What was she like before everything went wrong? I barely remember her. Baba Ade's face softened as memories of Nena flooded his mind. She was brilliant. Everything I know about business, I learned from her. She could walk into a room full of powerful men, say nothing, and still command respect. She always knew what to do, always had the right answer. She was my compass. I just didn't follow her advice when it mattered most. He paused, his voice growing thick with emotion. And she loved you, Ayo. She loved you with all her heart. Even when she left, it wasn't because she didn't love you. It was because she couldn't stay with me. Ayo looked down, his hands clenched into fists. I wish I could have known her. I wish she had stayed. Me too, Baba Ade whispered. But I was the reason she left, and I'm sorry. More than you'll ever know. The room fell into a somber quiet as Baba Ade's confession sank in. Kemi, ever the fighter, straightened her posture, determination flickering in her eyes. Then we find her, she said firmly. We find her, and we bring her home. No more running from the past, Baba. No more secrets. Baba Ade nodded, relief and dread mixing in his chest. He had avoided this for so long, but there was no more avoiding the truth. It was time to face it head-on. I'll start making calls. Ifeoma will be the first person I reach out to. We'll find Nena, I promise. Kemi gave a short nod, her expression unreadable. Good, because this family deserves closure. We deserve to know what happened and to have the chance to heal. As Kemi and Ayo began to stand, Baba Ade's voice cracked through the silence once more. Thank you, he said, his eyes glistening with tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed before. For giving me the chance to fix this. I don't deserve it, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you both. Ayo stepped forward, his face still a mask of controlled anger, but his voice softened. You've got a long way to go, Baba, but it's a start. With that, the children left the room, leaving Baba Ade alone with his thoughts, the weight of decades of guilt resting on his shoulders. He looked around the once grand living room, the emptiness of the house echoing his mistakes. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope, small, fragile, but real. Maybe, just maybe, he could make things right. But first, he had to find Nena, the woman who had always been his guiding star, the woman he had lost to his own selfishness. And this time, he wouldn't let her slip away. Baba Ade sat at his desk late into the night, his phone resting in his hand like a lifeline to the past. His mind raced with memories of Nena, her calm voice, her wise words, her unwavering strength. How had he let her go? How had he allowed his pride to destroy everything they had built? The phone felt heavier than usual as he scrolled to Ifeoma's number, unsure of what to expect. It had been years since they last spoke, and even then, their relationship had been strained. Ifeoma had always warned Nena about him. She saw through his charm and arrogance long before anyone else. Baba Ade had no doubt she would relish the opportunity to say, "I told you so." But this wasn't about him anymore. This was about his family, Ayo, Kemi, and Nena. He owed them more than his pride could ever give. With a deep breath, he dialed the number. The phone rang, each ring echoing in his ears like a countdown to Judgment Day. Finally, a voice crackled through the line. "Baba Ade!" Ifeoma's tone was sharp, almost accusatory. She didn't need to say anything else. The silence between them was louder than any words. "Ifeoma," Baba Ade started, his voice shaking slightly. I need to talk to you. It's about Nena." There was a long pause on the other end. Then, Ifeoma's voice came back, colder than before. "You have a lot of nerve calling me after all these years. What could you possibly want now?" "I need to find her," he said quickly, knowing there was no time for pleasantries. "Please, Ifeoma, I know I have no right to ask for your help, but I've changed. I need to make things right. For Ayo, for Kemi, and for Nena. Ifeoma let out a bitter laugh. Changed? You? Do you think a few pretty words will fix everything you've done? Nena loved you, Baba Ade, but you destroyed her. She trusted you, and you broke that trust over and over again. Why should I help you now? Baba Ade closed his eyes, forcing himself to swallow the guilt that threatened to choke him. Because I love her, Ifeoma. I loved her then, and I love her now. And because she deserves closure. Ayo deserves to know his mother. Kemi deserves to know why I wasn't there for her. I can't undo what I've done, but I can at least try to bring us all back together. Please, help me find her. There was silence again. For a moment, Baba Ade feared Ifeoma had hung up. But then her voice returned, quieter, but still edged with anger. You have no idea how much pain you caused, do you? Ifeoma's voice cracked slightly. Nena was strong, but you broke her. When she left, she was barely holding on. She had to rebuild her life, piece by piece, without you. And you just let her go. Baba Ade's chest tightened. He had known he hurt Nena, but hearing it from Ifeoma made it feel even more real, more unforgivable. I know, he whispered, his voice heavy with regret. I know I was wrong. I know I don't deserve her forgiveness or yours. But I'm begging you, Ifeoma. I need to make things right. Not for me. For them. Please. There was another pause, and Baba Ade could hear Ifeoma's heavy breathing on the other end. Finally, she sighed. Nena didn't want to be found. She didn't want to be dragged back into the mess you made. But I will tell you this. She's in Enugu, that's all I'll say. Whether she wants to see you or not, that's her choice. Don't thank me, Ifeoma snapped. You have a long way to go before you've earned that. And don't you dare hurt her again, Baba Ade. If you do, I swear, I'll never forgive you. Before he could respond, the line went dead. Baba Ade sat back, the name Enugu lingering in his mind. He had a place, a chance. Now, all that was left was to find the woman he had lost so many years ago, and hope she could still find it in her heart to hear him out. The next morning, Baba Ade gathered Ayo and Kemi in the living room, his heart pounding. He knew this journey to find Nena would be difficult, and the last thing he wanted was to do it alone. I spoke with Ifeoma last night, Baba Ade said, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. She told me where Nena is. She's in Enugu. Ayo and Kemi exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of hope and uncertainty. Are you sure she'll want to see you? Ayo asked, his tone cautious. I don't know, Baba Ade admitted, but I have to try. I owe her that much. And I owe you both the truth, even if it hurts. This journey isn't just about finding her. It's about facing everything I've been running from. Kemi stood up, her eyes filled with determination. Then we're coming with you. If you're going to face your past, so are we. Baba Ade's heart swelled with both pride and fear. This was no longer just his story. It was theirs too. Together, they would confront the ghosts of their past and seek the closure they all desperately needed. Then let's go, Baba Ade said, his voice filled with resolve. Let's find Nena and bring her home. The road to Enugu stretched out before them, winding through the lush, green landscape of eastern Nigeria. Baba Ade sat in the front seat of the car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his mind racing. In the back, Ayo and Kemi sat quietly, the tension between them thick. They had agreed to come with him, but the unresolved anger and confusion still lingered in the air. This wasn't just a journey to find Nena. It was a journey into their fractured past. As the car hummed along, Kemi finally broke the silence. Baba, she began, her voice hesitant. What if she doesn't want to see us? What if she's built a new life without us? Baba Ade sighed, his eyes focused on the road ahead. That's a possibility, he admitted, but we have to try. If we don't, we'll never know. And even if she doesn't want to see me, maybe she'll want to see you too. She loved you both, even when she left. Ayo leaned forward, his voice tight with restrained emotion. Do you really think this will fix anything, Baba? I mean, after everything, how can we just expect her to forgive and forget? Baba Ade's grip on the steering wheel tightened. I don't expect her to forgive me, Ayo. I'm not asking for that. But I need her to know that I've changed, that I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions. If she never wants to see me again, I'll accept that. But I can't let her think I don't care. I can't let her think I'm the same man I was all those years ago. Kemi looked out the window, her mind swimming with a mix of curiosity and fear. What kind of woman had Nena become after all these years? The woman who had left, broken but determined, was a stranger to her. And yet, she couldn't help but feel the pull of wanting to know her, to understand the mother she had never known. Hours later, they arrived in Enugu, the city bustling with life under the afternoon sun. Baba Ade's heart raced as they pulled up to the address Afeoma had given him. It was a modest, well-kept house, painted in warm earth tones, surrounded by a small garden. The place exuded a quiet serenity, so different from the chaotic life Baba Ade had left behind. Kemi was the first to step out of the car, her eyes scanning the house with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This is it, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Ayo followed, standing by her side, his tall frame tense. Do you think she's inside? Baba Ade remained in the car for a moment longer, gathering his thoughts. This was it, the moment he had feared and hoped for in equal measure. He had no idea what kind of reception awaited him. Would Nena slam the door in his face? Would she even recognize him? He stepped out of the car, his legs heavy as if weighed down by the years of guilt and regret he carried with him. There's only one way to find out, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Together, the three of them walked to the front door. Baba Ade hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand and knocked. The sound of footsteps echoed from inside the house, and Baba Ade's heart raced. The door creaked open, and there, standing before them, was Nena. Her face had changed over the years. There were lines of worry and experience etched into her skin, and her hair was streaked with gray. But her eyes were the same, sharp, clear, and full of the wisdom that had always set her apart. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of years of separation hung between them like a thick fog. Nena's eyes flicked from Baba Ade to Ayo and Kemi, recognition dawning slowly. Nena. Baba Ade's voice broke the silence, his throat tight with emotion. It's me. Nena's gaze lingered on him for a moment, unreadable, before her lips parted. I know who you are, Ade, she said, her voice calm, but with an edge of steel. But what are you doing here? The tension in the air was almost unbearable as Nena stood in the doorway, her posture rigid but not hostile. Baba Ade could feel the years between them, every mistake, every lie, every moment he had let her down, weighing heavily on his shoulders. This was the woman he had betrayed, the woman who had sacrificed so much for him, and here he was, asking for another chance. I needed to see you, Baba Ade said, his voice barely above a whisper. We needed to see you. Nena's eyes flicked over to Ayo and Kemi, softening for a moment before she spoke again. It's been a long time, Ada. What exactly do you expect me to say? Ayo stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. We're not here to make demands, Mom. We just want to know you. I've spent my whole life thinking you left because of me. But now I know it was him. He gestured toward Baba Ade, his words filled with a mix of pain and relief. I don't blame you for leaving, but I need to understand why you never came back. Nena's expression softened as she looked at her son. Ayo, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. I left because I couldn't stay in a place that was suffocating me, a place where I was constantly cleaning up after mistakes that weren't mine. She glanced at Baba Ade, her voice hardening slightly. I left because your father didn't give me any other choice. Kemi, who had been quiet up until now, stepped forward. And me? Did you know about me? Nena's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, there was a crack in her calm exterior. I didn't know, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I never knew about you, Kemi. If I had... Kemi shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. But we need to fix this. We need to be a family again, or at least, we need to try. Nena's eyes softened as she looked at Kemi, and for a moment there was silence as she took in the weight of Kemi's words. Finally, Nena stepped aside, her voice steady but full of emotion. Come in, she said quietly. We have a lot to talk about. As Baba Ade, Ayo, and Kemi stepped into the house, Baba Ade knew that this was only the beginning. The road to redemption was long, and forgiveness, if it came at all, would not be easy. But for the first time in years, he felt hope. A fragile, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, they could heal the wounds of the past and find their way back to each other. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and the air inside Nena's home felt heavy with history. Baba Ade scanned the room, a modest living space, simple yet warm. A wooden shelf lined with books, framed family photos that he wasn't a part of, and the smell of freshly brewed tea lingered in the air. It felt like a life she had built away from him, a life that no longer needed him. Nena gestured toward the seating area. Sit, she said, her voice steady but distant. There's no use standing around. Ayo and Kemi sat down on the sofa, their eyes darting around the room, as if searching for some clue about the life their mother had lived while they were apart. Baba Ade hesitated, the weight of his guilt pressing harder on his chest, before lowering himself into a chair across from Nena. She remained standing, her arms crossed as she studied them, her gaze flicking from her children to Baba Ade. So, she said finally, her voice tight with years of unresolved pain, you've come all this way. What exactly do you want? Baba Ade took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his failures settle over him like a dark cloud. Nena, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he began, his voice faltering. I know what I did, what I didn't do, hurt you in ways I can never fully understand. But I'm not here for myself. I'm here for them. They deserve the truth. They deserve to know what happened. And I need to try to make things right. Nena's expression remained unreadable as she uncrossed her arms, finally sitting down across from him. The truth, she repeated, almost mockingly. That's rich, coming from you. Do you even know what the truth is, Ade? After all the lies you told, all the secrets you kept, you think you can just come in here and fix things with a few words? Kemi spoke up, her voice soft but firm. Mom, we're not asking for miracles. We just want to understand. We've been living with this hole in our lives for so long, and it's time we filled it. Please. Nena's eyes softened slightly as she looked at Kemi, her heart aching at the thought of the years she had missed. But she had never imagined this, a broken family trying to piece together the wreckage of their lives. Nena leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. I tried, you know, she began, her voice laced with both strength and vulnerability. I tried to hold everything together for years. I believed in you, Ade. I believed in us. But every time I picked up the pieces of your mistakes, you found new ways to break things. I was tired of being the one holding everything up, while you destroyed everything we built. Baba Ade swallowed hard, the truth of her words cutting deep. I know, he said quietly. I know I let you down, and I know I can't change the past, but I'm not that man anymore. I've spent years running from this, but I'm done running. Ayo, who had been silent for most of the conversation, leaned forward, his voice tinged with frustration. But why, Baba? Why did you keep us in the dark? Why didn't you tell me about Kemi? About everything? I've spent my whole life thinking Mom left because of me." Baba Ade's eyes filled with regret as he turned to his son. I thought I could protect you by keeping the truth hidden. I was wrong. I was scared. Scared that if Kemi knew, everything would fall apart." Kemi's eyes filled with unshed tears. "And what did you think would happen when we found out on our own? You almost let us make the worst mistake of our lives by hiding the truth." Baba Ade's head dropped into his hands. "I know," he whispered. "I know, and I'll never forgive myself for that." Nena's eyes softened as she watched the man she once loved break down in front of her. She had seen this side of him before, the side that was vulnerable, human, but it had always come too late after the damage had been done. "You always thought I'd clean up your messes," Nena said quietly, her voice steady but filled with years of pent-up pain. "That I'd be there to save you, no matter how many times you broke things. But you were wrong, Ade. I'm not here to save you this time. I'm not here to fix what you broke. You have to do that on your own." Baba Ade lifted his head, his eyes pleading. "I'm not asking you to fix it, Nena. I'm asking for the chance to make things right, to fix what I can for them, for Ayo, for Kemi. I know it's too late for us, but it's not too late for them to have the family they deserve." Nena's gaze lingered on her children, her heart aching for them. She had left because she couldn't stay in the suffocating prison of lies Baba Ade had built, but she had never stopped loving them. Ayo had been her heart, her reason for holding on for as long as she did. And Kemi was the daughter she never had the chance to know. "Family," Nena said softly, almost to herself. "It's what we all want, isn't it? To be a part of something whole, something real." Kemi reached across the table, her voice trembling. "We can be that, Nena. We can start again. It won't be easy, but we can try. Please." For the first time since their arrival, Nena allowed herself to hope. She wasn't sure what the future held, but as she looked into the eyes of her children, strong, resilient, and determined, she knew one thing for certain: the past didn't have to define them anymore. Nena stood, her movements slow but deliberate. "I can't promise anything," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But if we're going to do this, we do it together, as a family." Baba Ade exhaled, a mixture of relief and fear washing over him. This was only the beginning, but it was more than he had ever hoped for. Nena hadn't shut the door on them, and for that, he was grateful. But first, they had to confront the shadows that still loomed over them, and Baba Ade knew it would be a long, hard road. Yet for the first time in a long time, he wasn't walking it alone. The room was quieter now, the air filled with a sense of fragile peace. The harsh words and old wounds had been laid bare, but there was a shared understanding in the room, a tentative willingness to move forward, no matter how uncertain the path might be. Baba Ade's heart was heavy, but for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Kemi sat with her arms crossed, her mind clearly turning over the events of the evening. She had never imagined meeting her mother would be this way, so full of tension and unspoken pain. But now that the moment had arrived, she found herself unsure of what to say. A part of her wanted to reach out, to embrace Nena, to tell her everything would be all right. Yet another part of her was still cautious, wary of the years of distance between them. As the tension in the room began to ease, Baba Ade felt a weight lift from his shoulders. But he knew that this fragile piece could easily shatter. His relationship with Nena would never be the same, but his hope now rested on the possibility of healing the relationships with his children. He turned toward Ayo, his eldest son, who had been unusually quiet since their arrival. "Ayo," Baba Ade began, his voice tentative. "I know I've failed you in more ways than I can count. I know you have every right to be angry with me, but I want to be the father you deserve, the father I should have been all along. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want the chance to earn back your trust." Ayo looked at his father, his expression unreadable. He had spent years living in the shadow of his father's mistakes, growing up with a mother he had never truly known, and discovering a sister only after the pieces of their lives had come crashing down. The anger and confusion still swirled inside him, but beneath it all was a desire to find peace, for himself and for his family. "You know, Baba," Ayo said slowly, his voice measured. "Growing up, I always thought you were this larger-than-life figure. I thought you could do no wrong. But then, as I got older, I realized you weren't perfect. None of us are. But what I can't understand is why you didn't come clean sooner. Why did you let us live with these lies for so long?" Baba Ade's chest tightened. This was the question he had feared most, and the one he knew he couldn't answer easily. "I was a coward, Ayo," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I was afraid of losing you, afraid of losing everything. I thought that if I kept the truth hidden, I could protect you. But I see now that I was only protecting myself." Ayo leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. "And look where that got us. You didn't protect us, Baba. You just delayed the inevitable." Baba Ade nodded, accepting the truth of his son's words. "You're right, and I'm sorry, more than you'll ever know." There was a long pause, and for a moment, Baba Ade feared he had lost his son for good. But then Ayo spoke again, his tone softer than before. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Baba. Not yet. But if you're serious about changing, if you're really going to face the things you've been running from, I'm willing to try. For Kemi, for Mom, and for myself." Baba Ade's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he nodded. "Thank you, Ayo. That's all I can ask for." As the night wore on, the conversation shifted from painful confessions to tentative steps toward healing. Nena sat beside the children, her heart heavy with both sorrow and hope. The years had been hard on her, harder than she had let anyone see. But sitting here with her family, she allowed herself a small glimmer of optimism. Baba Ade watched from across the room, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and dread. He knew they still had a long way to go. There would be no easy fixes, no quick forgiveness. But for the first time in years, the path forward didn't seem so impossible. Kemi looked at her mother, her eyes searching for answers that couldn't be easily spoken. "Nena," she said, her voice hesitant, "what happens now? Where do we go from here?" Nena smiled softly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We take it one day at a time," she replied. "There's no roadmap for this, no quick fix. But if we're going to move forward, we have to do it together. We can't change the past, but we can choose what kind of future we want." Ayo nodded in agreement. "We've been through enough lies. It's time to rebuild. Honestly this time." Baba Ade, his voice barely above a whisper, added, "And I'll be here. I'll face whatever comes. No more running. I'll do whatever it takes." Nena's gaze lingered on him, a mixture of emotions flickering in her eyes. Anger, sadness, and perhaps a sliver of compassion. "We'll see, Ade," she said softly, "but you'll have to prove it. Not just to me, but to them." Baba Ade nodded, his heart heavy but determined. "I will," he vowed. As the family sat together, the night stretching on, they knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. But they also knew that this was the first step, small, tentative, but a step nonetheless, toward healing the wounds of the past and rebuilding the family they had all lost. For the first time in years, there was a glimmer of hope, fragile as it was, that they could find their way back to each other. The days following their emotional reunion were filled with a cautious, delicate peace. Baba Ade, Ayo, and Kemi stayed in Enugu for a while longer, at Nena's quiet insistence. There was no grand announcement or promise of forgiveness, just a mutual understanding that healing would take time. Baba Ade had made many promises in the past, but this time he knew words were no longer enough. It would take action, patience, and a willingness to face the pain he had buried for so long. One morning, As the sunlight filtered through the windows of Nena's home, Ayo found himself sitting across from his mother at the kitchen table. Nena poured him a cup of tea, her movements slow and deliberate, her silence comfortable, but filled with unspoken questions. "Mom," Ayo said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about everything, about the past. I never really understood why you left. I mean, I get it now, but growing up, I didn't. I blamed myself. I blamed you. And Baba, well, he didn't exactly help explain things." Nena placed the teapot down, her hands resting on the table as she looked into her son's eyes. "I know, Ayo," she said softly, "and I'm sorry. I should have explained more to you before I left, but I was in so much pain. I didn't know how to stay in that house, living with the man I once loved, but who had betrayed me so deeply." Ayo nodded, understanding the complexity of her emotions now more than ever. "But you didn't come back, not even for me. Why?" Nena's face fell, and for a moment, her eyes glistened with the weight of the memories she had tried so hard to keep locked away. "It wasn't because I didn't love you," she said, her voice trembling. "I left because I had to. I couldn't survive in that environment, but every day I thought of you. Leaving you with Baba was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I thought you'd be better off without me there, watching the chaos unfold." Ayo swallowed hard, trying to process the years of pain and misunderstanding. "I missed you every day, Mom. I needed you, and I didn't understand why you weren't there." Nena reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it over Ayo's. "I know, my son. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that. But now, we have a chance. A chance to build something new. It won't be easy, but I'm here now. I'm here for you, for Kemi, and even for your father." Ayo's brow furrowed slightly at the mention of Baba Ade, but he nodded. "Yeah, we'll try." Meanwhile, Baba Ade stood outside, pacing along the garden's edge, his mind swirling with thoughts of the future. He had promised himself he would be different, that he would make amends. But as the days wore on, he realized just how monumental that task was. Nena had been cordial, but distant, and though Ayo and Kemi had shown a willingness to move forward, there was still a barrier between them, one that only time and effort could break. As he walked back toward the house, Kemi stepped outside, closing the door quietly behind her. "Baba!" she called, her tone neutral but not cold. Baba Ade turned, his eyes tired but hopeful. "Kemi, are you all right?" She shrugged, walking over to stand beside him. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about wanting to make things right." Baba Ade braced himself, unsure of what was coming. "And?" Kemi folded her arms, staring out at the small garden, a peaceful contrast to the emotional storm they were all navigating. "I believe you want to change, but you've made a lot of promises in the past. You've said you'd fix things before, and you didn't. So, how do I know this time is different?" Baba Ade felt his heart sink. He had expected this question, but hearing it from his daughter, the one he had let down the most, was still a painful reminder of his failures. "I don't expect you to trust me right away, Kemi," he said quietly. "All I can do is show you through my actions. I'm not the man I was before. I've lost too much to stay that man." Kemi turned to face him, her expression softening slightly. "You've lost a lot, Baba. But so have we. I think that's what you need to understand. It's not just about making things right with Nena, or even with me and Ayo. It's about owning what you did and how it affected us all." Baba Ade nodded, her words hitting him like a wave of clarity. "You're right, and I'm willing to face it. I'll do whatever it takes." Kemi gave a small nod, her eyes searching his for signs of sincerity. "We'll see. Actions speak louder than words. Just don't disappear again. Don't run when things get tough." "I won't," Baba Ade promised, his voice resolute. "I'm here, for good." Later that evening, Nena and Baba Ade found themselves alone in the living room. Ayo and Kemi had gone for a walk, leaving their parents to navigate the awkward silence between them. Nena sat on the couch, her posture poised and graceful, while Baba Ade stood by the window, staring out at the dimming light. "I never thought we'd be sitting in the same room again," Nena said, her voice soft but edged with years of unspoken hurt. Baba Ade turned, his heart heavy. "Neither did I, but I'm glad we are." Nena looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. "You say you've changed. You say you want to make things right. But what does that even mean, Ade? Do you even know where to start?" Baba Ade sighed, walking over to sit in the chair opposite her. "I don't have all the answers, Nena. I know I've hurt you, and I know I can never fully repair the damage I've done. But I want to try. I want to make up for the years I took from you, from Ayo, from Kemi, even if it means facing my mistakes every single day." Nena's eyes met his, her gaze sharp but weary. "It's not about making up for the past, Ade. It's about being present now, about showing up for them, for yourself. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did to us, but the only way we move forward is if you stop hiding from the truth." Baba Ade nodded, his heart aching with the weight of her words. "I'm done hiding, Nena. I'll face whatever comes, no matter how hard it is. And I'll do it for them, for you, for all of us." The silence that followed was heavy, but not unbearable. It was a silence filled with the possibility of redemption, fragile and tentative. They weren't there yet, not even close, but there was a glimmer of something they had both thought was long lost: hope. As the night deepened, Nena and Baba Ade sat in that fragile silence, each lost in their own thoughts. For Nena, the road ahead was still unclear. Could she truly believe that this man, the one who had caused so much pain, was capable of real change? But as she watched him sitting quietly, no longer the arrogant, prideful man she had known in their youth, she sensed something different. He was older, weathered by life, and perhaps, just perhaps, willing to atone. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Baba Ade said, his voice breaking the quiet. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance to be here for Ayo and Kemi, to make things right for them, even if it's too late for us." Nena looked at him, her expression softening. "It's not about deserving, Ade. Life doesn't work like that. You caused a lot of damage, but they're willing to give you a chance. Don't let them down." "I won't," he promised, his voice steady. "I've let them down enough." Nena sighed, rising from the couch and walking toward the window. The moonlight spilled through, casting a gentle glow on her face. "You know," she said after a long pause, "there was a time I believed in us, believed in you. I never stopped believing in our family, even when you were at your worst. But I couldn't carry it all on my own. No one can." Baba Ade felt a pang in his chest as he listened to her. He had been blind to her suffering, thinking only of his own desires, his own pride. He had taken her strength for granted, believing that she would always be there to pick up the pieces. "I'm sorry, Nena," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have listened to you. I should have valued what we had before it was too late." Nena turned to face him, her eyes searching his for any sign of the man she had once loved. "Maybe we can't go back," she said softly, "but we can still move forward. We owe that to our children." Baba Ade nodded, his heart swelling with both sadness and relief. "Yes, we do." The next morning, the house was quiet. Ayo and Kemi were still asleep, and Nena sat at the kitchen table, sipping her tea. Baba Ade entered the room, unsure of what to say after the conversation they'd had the previous night. But there was something different in the air, a feeling that, while the past still loomed large, there was a small space for the future to take root. "Good morning," he said, his voice soft. Nena glanced up from her tea. "Morning," she replied, her tone neutral but not cold. Baba Ade hesitated for a moment, then took a seat across from her. "I've been thinking about what you said. I know we have a long way to go, but I want to start by being honest about everything. No more hiding. I owe that to you and to them." Nena nodded, but didn't speak. She simply watched him, waiting to see what he would say next. "I've already started reaching out to the people I owe apologies to. Business partners, colleagues, people who trusted me and who I let down because I was too focused on myself. It's not just our family I hurt. I have to face that too." Nena raised an eyebrow, surprised by this admission. "That's a start," she said, her voice thoughtful. "But it's not just about apologizing to others. You need to make sure Ayo and Kemi know they can count on you no matter what. That's the real work." Baba Ade nodded. "I know. I'm going to take it one day at a time, and I won't make promises I can't keep anymore. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions." Nena sipped her tea, her gaze softening just slightly. "It's going to take time, Ade. They're still hurting. We all are. But if you're really willing to do the work, maybe there's hope." Baba Ade smiled faintly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. A small crack in the wall of mistrust that had built up over the years. He could live with that. Later that afternoon, Baba Ade found Kemi sitting alone in the garden, her knees pulled up to her chest as she stared out at the flowers blooming in the midday sun. She had been quiet since their conversation the day before, and Baba Ade knew there was still much left unsaid between them. He approached her cautiously, sitting down beside her on the grass. "Mind if I join you?" Kemi shrugged. "It's a free garden." Baba Ade smiled at her response, though he knew there was still tension behind her casual demeanor. "You've always been strong, Kemi," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Even when you didn't know the truth, you faced life with a courage I never had. I'm proud of you." Kemi didn't respond at first, her eyes still fixed on the flowers. "I don't know what to think anymore, Baba," she said finally. "I spent my whole life wondering who you were, why you didn't care enough to be in my life. And now, here you are, asking for another chance. It's hard to believe." Baba Ade's heart ached at her words, but he knew she had every right to feel this way. "I understand," he said quietly. "I've given you every reason not to trust me. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to forgive me right away, Kemi. I just want you to know that I'll be here for as long as it takes." Kemi glanced at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. "I guess we'll see," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "But don't expect me to just let you in. It's going to take time." Baba Ade nodded, his heart swelling with both sadness and hope. "I don't expect anything, Kemi. I'll wait as long as you need." Kemi turned back to the flowers, her expression softening just slightly. "I'm not ready yet," she said, "but maybe one day." Baba Ade smiled, the faintest glimmer of hope flickering in his chest. One day is enough. The days stretched into weeks, and slowly, the fractured pieces of their family began to shift, aligning into something new, something fragile, but real. Baba Ade, Ayo, Kemi, and Nena began the long and painful process of healing, each of them taking small steps toward a future that didn't erase the past, but acknowledged it. There were no grand gestures or sweeping declarations of forgiveness. Instead, there were quiet moments, conversations over tea, shared meals, and hesitant smiles that slowly gave way to something more genuine. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Ayo looked at his father with a mixture of curiosity and determination. "Baba," he began, "what are you planning to do next?" "You've always been the man with the plan. What's your plan now?" Baba Ade paused, setting his fork down as he considered the question. "I don't have all the answers yet," he admitted. "But I know this. My priority is my family. I spent so many years chasing success, thinking it would make me whole. But now, I see that the only thing that really matters is right here at this table." Kemi raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in her expression. So, what? You're just going to stop working and focus on us? Baba Ade smiled faintly. No, I'm not going to stop working, but I'm going to make sure my family comes first. No more secrets, no more running away. I want us to heal, and that means being here, fully, completely. Nena watched him, her eyes filled with both caution and a flicker of belief. It'll take time, Ade, she said softly, but maybe, just maybe, we can find our way back to something better. As the family sat together, the night stretching on with conversation and quiet laughter, Baba Ade felt something shift inside him, a lightness, a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. They were far from perfect, and the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time, they were walking it together. And that, for now, was enough. The weeks in Enugu slowly turned into months, and with each passing day, the family found themselves coming to terms with their new reality. Ayo and Kemi were rebuilding their relationship with their father, though both held on to the pain of the past in different ways. Kemi, ever the guarded one, still kept a distance, but there were moments of warmth between them, a shared laugh, a quiet conversation about her ambitions. Ayo, on the other hand, was more open but still harbored a deep resentment over the years of deception. He wanted to forgive Baba Ade, but trust, he realized, wasn't something that could be given easily. Nena, too, struggled with the tension between her hope for the future and the scars of her past. Though she had come to terms with Baba Ade's presence in her life again, there were days when the anger would resurface, when she would look at him and remember the man who had once betrayed her trust. Yet, in quieter moments, she saw the effort he was making, the way he was trying to rebuild his relationships with Ayo and Kemi. One afternoon, the family gathered in the living room, the atmosphere lighter than it had been in months. Ayo was telling a story about his work in Lagos, and Kemi chimed in with her own thoughts about returning to the city to pursue her studies. It was the most natural conversation they'd had as a family in years. You know, Nena said, her voice calm but thoughtful, I've been thinking about moving back to Lagos. It's time I stopped hiding here. Baba Ade looked up, surprised. You're thinking of coming back? Nena nodded. I am. Enugu has been a place of healing for me, but it's not where I belong anymore. My life is with my son, and maybe with the life we can rebuild together. Ayo and Kemi exchanged glances, and Kemi's face softened. It would be good to have you back. Nena smiled, and for the first time in a long time, Baba Ade saw something he had thought was lost. Hope. It wasn't long before they all returned to Lagos, their homecoming quiet, but filled with significance. The city buzzed with life, and though it was the same place they had always known, it felt different now, a place of second chances. One evening, as they sat on the veranda, the sunset casting a warm glow over the city, Ayo turned to his father. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about being present. Baba Ade nodded, waiting for his son to continue. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again, but I want to try. For Kemi, for Mom, and for myself. I want us to be a family. Baba Ade's heart swelled with gratitude. That's all I could ask for, Ayo. I'll work every day to earn that trust. Kemi, sitting beside them, chimed in. And no more secrets. We're doing this as a family, together. Nena, who had been listening quietly, placed her hand over Baba Ade's. We've come a long way, she said softly, but this is only the beginning. As time passed, the family settled into a new rhythm. Baba Ade resumed his work, but this time with a renewed sense of purpose. He involved Nena in every decision, valuing her advice as he should have from the start. Ayo and Kemi were flourishing, Ayo excelling in his career, and Kemi returning to her studies with a fierce determination. The wounds of the past still lingered, but the scars were slowly healing. One day, Baba Ade received a call from Yinka, Kemi's mother. It was a voice he hadn't heard in years, and the sound of it sent a shiver down his spine. "We need to talk," Yinka said simply. The conversation with Yinka was difficult. She had lived her own life, raising Kemi in isolation, and though she had made peace with the choices she'd been forced to make, there was still bitterness there. She wanted to meet Kemi. She felt it was her right, but she was unsure of how to approach it. Baba Ade promised to facilitate a meeting, knowing that this would be the final test of the family's resolve. The conversation that followed was awkward, filled with tentative questions and careful answers. But by the end of the evening, there was a sense of peace, a feeling that, though they could never undo the past, they could at least face it together. Months later, as the family gathered for dinner, there was a noticeable lightness in the air. The conversations flowed more easily, and the laughter came more naturally. The cracks in their relationships hadn't fully healed, but they had learned to live with them, to embrace the imperfections of their family as part of their journey. Baba Ade looked around the table at his family, at Nena, strong and resilient, at Ayo, wise beyond his years, at Kemi, brave and determined, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had come through the fire, and though the journey had been painful, they were stronger for it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the room, Nena raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice filled with quiet strength. "We've come a long way, and there's still a long way to go, but we're doing it together." Ayo and Kemi raised their glasses, smiling. Baba Ade, his heart full, lifted his glass as well. "To family," he said, "to forgiveness, to love, and to always moving forward." They clinked their glasses together, the sound ringing out like a promise that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family, together. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, Baba Ade knew peace. The road had been long and fraught with pain, but they had found their way back to each other. And that, more than anything, was worth everything. The past would always be a part of them, but the future was theirs to build, one step at a time. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey through Baba Ade's story. We hope you were as moved by the characters and their emotional path to truth and redemption as we were. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections in the comments. What moments resonated with you the most? Don't hesitate to share your feelings about the twists and the ending. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to explore more captivating African folktales and bedtime stories on this channel. Each tale offers something unique: lessons, adventure, and wisdom passed down through generations. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss another story.